The Galactic Council had kept peace among the stars for 12,000 years. 37 different species worked together, traded together, and lived together under one set of laws. Their great station, Prime, floated in the heart of civilized space. It was a place of diplomats and merchants, of ancient wisdom and shared dreams. War was a memory. Violence was forbidden. The galaxy had found balance. Then the came, and everything changed. Admiral was a simple man who had risen through hard work and loyalty. He commanded a small patrol fleet near the outer colonies, far from the great powers of the galaxy. His flagship, the Indomitable, was old but reliable. His crew was young but well-trained. They spent their days checking cargo ships and helping lost travelers. It was quiet work, safe work. The emergency signal came at midnight ship time. Was sleeping in his quarters when the alarm pulled him awake. He dressed quickly and ran to the bridge. His first officer, commander, was already there. Her face was pale, and her hands shook as she worked the communication controls. "Admiral," she said, "you need to hear this." She pressed a button, and a voice filled the bridge. It was broken and full of fear. Recognized it immediately. Counselor Park was one of humanity's representatives on the Galactic Council. She was known for her calm nature and steady voice. But now she sounded like a frightened child. "To all vessels, this is Prime. We are under attack. They came without warning. One fleet, just one fleet. Our defenses are gone. The Council is evacuating. Please, someone help us." The message repeated, then turned to static. Stood very still. Around him his crew watched and waited. Some were afraid, others were confused. None of them understood what they had just heard. "Show me," said quietly. Brought up the tactical display. The holographic image flickered to life in the center of the bridge. What it showed made its blood run cold. 600 ships hung in space around Prime. They were unlike anything in the Council's records. Their hulls were black as the void between stars, and red lights pulsed along their surfaces like beating hearts. They moved with terrible grace, firing weapons that cut through the defending fleet like fire through paper. The Council had gathered ships from 11 different species to protect their capital. 3,000 vessels from the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Ancient warships with technology perfected over thousands of years. In the display, watched them die. One by one, hundred by hundred. In less than 3 hours, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled was reduced to floating wreckage. "Who are they?" someone whispered. The answered, her voice was hollow. "Intelligence had reports, rumors from beyond the rim, a species that conquers and consumes. We thought they were just stories." Watched the last Council ship explode in silence. The fleet did not celebrate. It simply moved on, heading deeper into civilized space, hunting. In the hours that followed, more reports came in. Though one of the oldest species in the galaxy had sealed their borders and hidden their people underground. The famous for their warriors had retreated to there and refused all communication. The who had helped build the Council itself had gone completely silent. No one knew if they were preparing to fight or preparing to die. Fear spread faster than light. Civilizations that had stood for began to crumble. Governments fell. Populations fled. The galaxy had faced many challenges over the centuries, but nothing like this. Nothing so absolute. Called his senior officers to the conference room. They gathered around the table, tired and afraid. He looked at each of them in turn. He saw doubt in their eyes. He saw the question they were all asking themselves. What could they possibly do against such power? "Earth Command has sent a request," he told them. "They want our assessment of the situation." "What is there to assess?" said Lieutenant, his weapons officer. "The Council fleet is destroyed. They are unstoppable. We should fall back and protect our own territory." "And then what?" asked Ensign Minu, the youngest officer at the table. "Wait for them to come for us too." "At least we would have time," argued. "Time to prepare, time to build." "The thought the same thing," said softly. "They are already hiding. They are already running. In a few months they will reach them anyway. Time means nothing against an enemy like this." Silence fell over the room. Let it stretch. He wanted them to feel the weight of the moment. He wanted them to understand what was at stake. "When I was a child," he said finally, "my grandfather told me stories about Earth, about the old wars before we reached the stars. He told me about times when everything seemed lost, when enemies came that seemed impossible to defeat, and he told me what our ancestors did in those moments." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, stars burned in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, civilizations were dying. "They did not hide," he continued. "They did not run. They stood together and they fought, not because they were certain of victory, but because giving up was never an option, because being human meant something." He turned back to his officers. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with something none of them had seen before. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something older, something deeper. "The galaxy is afraid," he said. "Every species out there is looking at thee and seeing the end of everything they know. They have given up hope. They have accepted defeat." He walked back to the table and placed both hands flat on its surface. "Humanity will not." Met his eyes. "What do we do, Admiral?" Straightened. "Send my assessment to Earth Command. Tell them the situation is exactly as bad as they fear. Tell them the Council is broken, the galaxy is falling, and that cannot be stopped by any force currently in existence." He paused. "Then tell them that humanity should not be afraid. Tell them we have faced darkness before. And tell them it is time to remind the galaxy what humans do when the night grows dark." He walked toward the door, then stopped. "We light fires," he said, "and we do not stop until dawn." The message reached Earth 3 hours later, and everything changed. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, the United Terran Assembly met in emergency session. The Great Chamber had been built centuries ago, carved from solid rock to survive any disaster. Its walls were lined with the flags of every nation, every colony, every station that called itself human. Representatives from across the solar system and beyond filled the seats. Their faces showed fear, confusion, and anger. President sat at the head of the chamber. He was 63 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his life in service to humanity. He had seen wars and plagues and disasters, but nothing had prepared him for this. Defense Minister Han stood at the podium. She was a small woman with a sharp mind and a soldier's bearing. Behind her, holographic displays showed the destruction at Prime. The images played on repeat. Council ships burning, stations exploding, millions dying in seconds. "They have issued their demands," said. Her voice was steady, but her hands gripped the podium tightly. "All species must surrender. Those who refuse will be harvested. Their populations will be taken. Their worlds will be stripped of resources. Their civilizations will be erased from history. We have 30 days to comply." The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted over each other. Some demanded action. Others called for caution. A few argued for surrender. "We are too young," cried Representative Lee from the Luna colonies. "Humanity has only been among the stars for 2 centuries. The Council species have thousands of years of experience. If they cannot defeat what chance do we have?" "Then we should protect our own," shouted Representative from the Mars Federation. "Pull back our ships, defend our borders. Let the older species fight their own war." "That is cowardice," answered Representative from the outer colonies. "They will not stop at Council space. They will come for us eventually. Better to fight now together than to die alone later." The arguments continued for hours. Listened to all of them. He did not interrupt. He did not take sides. He simply watched and thought and waited. Finally raised her hand for silence. The chamber slowly quieted. "The Galactic Council has made a request," she said. "They are forming a joint defensive force from the surviving species. They have asked humanity to contribute ships to this effort. They want one fleet, approximately 200 vessels. One fleet, asked Representative. That is everything we have. Not quite everything, replied, but close. It would leave our own space nearly undefended. More arguments broke out. The representatives debated numbers and strategies and risks. Some said humanity should give nothing. Others said humanity should give everything. No one could agree. Rose from his seat. The chamber fell silent instantly. Every eye turned to the president. He walked slowly to the podium and stepped aside to let him speak. For a long moment, he simply stood there, looking out at the faces of humanity's leaders. When our ancestors first left Earth, he began, they did not know what they would find. They hoped for friendly neighbors. They feared enemies. What they discovered was something else entirely. They found civilizations older than human memory, species who had traveled the stars while we were still learning to make fire. These beings looked at us and saw children, infants taking their first steps into a very old universe. He paused, letting his words settle. Perhaps they were right. We are young. We are small. We have not built the great monuments of the or mastered the ancient arts of the. In the grand history of the galaxy, humanity is barely a footnote. He turned to look at the images still playing behind him. The burning ships, the dying stations, the end of an era. But we have never been a species that watches others suffer when we can act. We have never been a people who count the cost before doing what is right. Our history is filled with moments like this. Moments when the wise said to wait, when the careful said to hide, when the practical said to give up. His voice grew stronger. And in every one of those moments, ordinary humans refused. They stood up. They fought back. Not because victory was certain, not because the odds were in their favor, but because being human meant something. Because there are some things worth fighting for, even when you might lose. He turned back to face the assembly. The council has asked us for one fleet. Nodded, yes, sir. They look at thee and see an enemy that cannot be beaten. They see 600 ships that destroyed 3,000. They see power beyond anything they have faced, and they think one fleet might slow them down, might buy time, might delay the end by a few weeks or months. His eyes hardened. They are thinking like people who have already lost. He raised his hand and pointed at the display. One fleet frightened the entire galaxy. One fleet made ancient civilizations hide like children afraid of the dark. One fleet convinced 37 species that hope was dead. He lowered his hand. Authorized the construction of 10 fleets. The chamber went completely silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Representatives stared at the president as if he had lost his mind. 10 asked carefully, "Sir, that would require—" "Full mobilization," interrupted. "Every shipyard working day and night, every factory producing weapons and armor, every mine supplying materials, every pilot training for combat, every engineer building ships, every scientist developing new technology." "It would take everything we have," said. "Yes." "It would leave nothing in reserve." "Yes." "If we fail, there will be nothing left to protect our own people." Looked at her calmly. "If we fail, there will be nothing left to protect. They will not stop at council space. They will not honor borders or treaties. They will consume everything, every species, every world, every life, including ours." He turned back to the assembly. "The galaxy believes one fleet ends hope. Humanity will show them what hope looks like. We will build 10 fleets, 2,000 ships, and we will take them into battle against an enemy that has never known defeat." He stepped down from the podium. "We will show them what humans do when darkness comes. We will show them fire." Representative stood slowly, "And if we lose?" Met his eyes. "Then we will lose fighting for something worth dying for, and the galaxy will remember that when every other species ran, humanity stood." He walked toward the door. "Authorize Project Sunrise, Minister Han. We have 30 days." The vote was unanimous. Across human space, the forges began to burn. The great shipyard above Mars had never been quiet. For 200 years it had built vessels for exploration and trade. Workers came and went in shifts, building one ship at a time with careful precision. It was steady work, reliable work. Now it was chaos. Chief Engineer Shin stood on the observation platform and watched his shipyard transform. Thousands of workers moved below him like ants building a nest. Sparks flew from welding torches. Cranes swung massive hull sections into place. Cargo ships arrived every hour with raw materials. Where once a single ship had taken months to build, now dozens rose from the construction bays at the same time. Had not slept in 3 days. His eyes burned and his body ached, but he could not stop. Would not stop. Every ship he built was another chance. Every weapon he installed was another hope. His assistant, a young woman named, ran up to him with a, "Chief, we have a problem. The new dreadnought designs require more power cores than we have in storage." "How many do we need?" 47, we have 32. Thought for a moment. Contact the Jupiter stations. Tell them to strip the cores from their construction drones. We will rebuild those later. Hesitated. Those drones are essential for their mining operations. Their mining operations will not matter if the win. Took the and signed the order himself. Send it, and tell them Project Sunrise thanks them for their sacrifice. Across human space, similar scenes played out every day. Factories that had made civilian vehicles now produced warship components. Universities emptied as students volunteered for military service. Retired soldiers returned to duty. Scientists abandoned their research to develop new weapons. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a purpose. On Luna, the Fleet Academy pushed its students harder than ever before. Cadet was 22 years old. She had dreamed of flying among the stars since she was a child. Now that dream had become something else, something darker. The simulation chamber shook as enemy fire struck her virtual ship. Warning lights flashed. Alarms screamed. On her display, 3 fighters closed in from different directions. "Evade," shouted her instructor through the communication system. "Do not let them box you in." Pulled hard on the controls. Her fighter spun to the left, narrowly avoiding a burst of crimson energy. She fired back, hitting one of the enemy ships. It exploded in a ball of light. But the other 2 were faster. They adjusted their approach, cutting off her escape routes. She tried to maneuver, but there was nowhere to go. Energy beams struck her hull. Her shields failed. Her engines died. The simulation ended with her death. The lights came on and climbed out of the chamber. Her instructor, Admiral, waited for her with crossed arms. "You lasted 47 seconds longer than your last attempt," said. "That is improvement." Felt shame burn in her chest. "I still died." "Yes, you did," walked closer. "The fighters are faster than ours. Their weapons hit harder. Their pilots have been fighting for centuries. In a fair battle, you will lose every time." "Then how do we win?" Smiled grimly. "We do not fight fair. We fight smart. We fight together. One human pilot cannot defeat one pilot, but 10 human pilots working as a team can destroy a squadron. 20 can take down a cruiser. 100 can break a formation." She put a hand on shoulder. "You are not training to be a hero, cadet. You are training to be part of something bigger. When you fly into battle, you will not be alone. Remember that." While the military prepared, another kind of miracle was happening across human space. Refugee ships had been arriving since the first week of the crisis. Families fled their sealed. Warriors escaped the shame of retreat. Survivors emerged from the silence of their fallen civilization. They came in broken ships with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the fear in their hearts. President opened the gates to all of them. "Every colony will accept refugees," he announced. "Every station will provide shelter. These people have lost everything. We will not turn them away." Some humans complained. Resources were already stretched thin. Every bed given to a refugee was a bed taken from a citizen. Every meal shared was a meal lost, but would not change his mind. If we fight only for ourselves, he said, then we are no better than they. We fight for everyone. We protect everyone. That is what makes us human. The refugees watched in amazement as human schools opened their doors to alien children. Hospitals treated wounded warriors of species they had never seen. Families shared their homes with strangers from across the galaxy. It was kindness on a scale the galaxy had never witnessed. In deep space, Admiral continued his impossible mission. His small patrol fleet had become a guerrilla force, striking the wherever they could. They could not win battles, they could not stop the advance, but they could wound the enemy, slow them down, buy precious days for the forges of Earth. After each engagement, Commander calculated their losses. The numbers grew worse every time. "We have lost 12 more ships," she reported after a raid on a supply convoy. 47 dead, 112 wounded. Studied the tactical display. The fleet was growing. They had captured council ships and repaired them for their own use. New reinforcements arrived from beyond the rim. The enemy that had frightened the galaxy with 600 ships now numbered nearly 2,000. "How long until the home fleets are ready?" he asked. 15 days. 15 days. It seemed like forever. It seemed like nothing. "Can we hold that long?" Looked at her data, looked at the enemy's strength, looked at their own dwindling numbers. "I do not know, sir." Nodded slowly. He had expected that answer. "Then we will hold anyway," he said. "Every day we buy is another ship built, another pilot trained, another weapon forged. We hold until they are ready. And if we die before then—" He turned to face her. His face was tired, but his eyes were steady. "Then we die buying time for those who will finish what we started." On Mars, Shin completed another dreadnought. On Luna, passed another simulation. On Earth, watched the fleet counters rise. The forges burned, the pilots trained the ships. 15 days remained. They arrived at the human border on the 28th day. They came like a dark cloud spreading across the stars. 1,800 warships filled the space between two galaxies, their black hulls blocking the light of distant suns. At their center flew the command vessel of the supreme commander of the conquest fleet. Was ancient by any species standards. He had led campaigns against 100 civilizations. He had watched empires crumble and worlds burn. In all his centuries of war, he had never known defeat. Victory was not a hope for him. It was a certainty. He broadcast his ultimatum across all frequencies, letting every human hear his voice. "People of Earth," he said, "your time has come. We have crushed species far older and stronger than you. We have broken fleets that made yours look like toys. You have two choices. Surrender now and serve us. Resist and be erased. There is no third option. There is no escape. There is no hope." The message reached every colony, every station, every ship in human space. Billions of people heard the voice of their enemy and felt fear grip their hearts. On Earth, President stood before the United Terran Assembly one final time. But this time, his speech was broadcast to every screen and speaker across human civilization. Everyone listened. Everyone watched. "The believe we are afraid," said. "They have conquered species far more advanced than us. They have never lost a war. And so they cannot understand what is about to happen. They do not understand humanity." Behind him, the tactical display flickered to life. 10 fleet markers appeared across the map of human space. Each marker represented hundreds of vessels. Each vessel carried thousands of determined souls. "We built these fleets in 30 days. We did it because we refused to surrender. We refused to run. We refuse to let darkness consume the galaxy while we stand by and watch." His voice grew stronger. "To think one fleet ends hope. Today, they will learn what hope looks like. Today, they will face the fire of humanity. Admiral received supreme command of the combined armada. His battered patrol fleet joined the others at the border. For the first time, he saw what humanity had built. 2,300 warships filled his tactical display, dreadnoughts the size of small moons, carriers filled with thousands of fighters, cruisers bristling with weapons, destroyers ready to strike like lightning. It was the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled, and it was still smaller than the enemy. Opened a channel to all ships, pilots and crew of the human fleet. In a few minutes we will engage they have more ships than us. They have better technology. They have centuries of experience in war. On paper we should lose. He paused. But we are not paper. We are human, and humans do not care about odds. We care about each other. We care about the people behind us. We care about the galaxy we have sworn to protect. The fight for conquest. We fight for everyone they would destroy. He took a deep breath. Today we show them what that means. All ships advance, for humanity, for the galaxy, for the dawn. At 600 hours Galactic Standard Time, the human fleet attacked. The battle that followed would be remembered for 10,000 years. It spread across 3 star systems as the two fleets clashed in the greatest naval engagement the galaxy had ever seen. Weapons carved through human hulls like knives through flesh. Ships exploded in flashes of terrible light. Hundreds died in the first minute, hundreds more in the minute after. But humanity did not break. Commander led a carrier group straight into the heart of the formation. Her fighters swarmed around enemy cruisers, overwhelming their defenses through sheer numbers. When her carrier took critical damage, she ordered all hands to escape pods and then drove the burning ship into a destroyer, destroying both in a ball of fire. Cadet flew with the fighter squadrons, remembering everything Admiral had taught her. She did not try to be a hero. She worked with her team, covering their attacks, drawing enemy fire, creating openings. Her squadron destroyed 12 fighters before her own ship was hit. She ejected seconds before it exploded and was rescued by a passing cruiser. Chief Engineer Shin's prototype vessels entered the battle with experimental weapons. Plasma cannons designed in desperation, built in haste, untested in combat. They should not have worked, but they did. For the first time, shields failed against human weapons. For the first time, the invincible enemy bled. On the command ship, watched his fleet crumble with growing disbelief. This was not possible. These humans were children. Their technology was primitive. Their experience was nothing. Yet they fought like demons from ancient legend. When human ships were crippled, their crews did not surrender. They turned their dying vessels toward the enemy and rammed them, taking ships with them into death. When human weapons failed, soldiers in sealed armor boarded enemy vessels with nothing but rifles and knives, fighting hand to hand in the corridors of ships they had never seen before. They died by the hundreds, by the thousands, and still they kept coming. Admiral directed the battle from the bridge of the Indomitable. His ship had been hit 17 times. Fires burned in 3 sections. Half his weapons were destroyed, but his voice remained calm as he gave orders. 7th Squadron reinforced the left flank. Carrier Group 3 launch remaining fighters. All dreadnoughts focus fire on the enemy command ship. The human fleet pushed forward like a wave that would not stop. Slowly, impossibly, they began to fall back. Ordered a retreat for the first time in his long life. But it was too late. Human ships surrounded his fleet, cutting off escape routes, herding them into kill zones. The hunter had become the hunted. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it finally ended, the void was filled with wreckage from both sides. 1,200 human ships had been destroyed. Nearly 200,000 souls had died in the darkness between stars. But not one vessel remained, not one. Stood on his damaged bridge and looked at the debris field that had been the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wet. "It is done," he said quietly. "We won." Across human space, the news spread faster than light. People wept in the streets. Strangers hugged each other. Refugees from a dozen species celebrated with their human hosts. The galaxy exhaled for the first time in 30 days. They had been stopped. Humanity had paid an unimaginable price. But they had won. The galaxy had held its breath for 30 days. Now it exhaled, and the sound was like the universe itself sighing with relief. News of the human victory spread across every system, every station, every world. The who had frightened 37 species into hiding had been destroyed. Their fleet was gone. Their commander was dead. The surviving ships fled into the darkness beyond the rim, broken and scattered, never to threaten civilized space again. For the first time in a month, people dared to hope. On Prime, the Galactic Council gathered in their damaged chamber. Smoke still hung in the air from fires that had burned for weeks. Half the seats were empty. Many species had lost their representatives in the first attack. Those who remained looked tired and small, like children who had survived a nightmare. Counselor Park stood before them. Her voice was steady, though her heart still ached with the memories of all she had witnessed. "The threat is over," she said. "They are defeated. We owe our survival to the people of Earth." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some of the older species shifted uncomfortably. For thousands of years, they had looked at humanity as newcomers, barely worth noticing. Now those newcomers had saved them all. The High Speaker of the Council, an ancient being named who had ruled for 3 centuries, rose slowly from his seat. He was thin and frail, with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. "When humanity first joined the Council," he said, "many of us questioned whether they belonged. They were young, inexperienced, loud. They did not understand our ways or respect our traditions. Some of us wished they would simply go away." He paused, and his old eyes found across the chamber. "We were fools. In our hour of greatest need, when every other species ran and hid, humanity stood alone against the darkness. They bled for us, they died for us, and they won for us." He raised his hand in the ancient gesture of honor. "From this day forward, humanity shall hold a permanent seat on the Galactic Council, not as junior members, not as observers, as equals, as protectors, as the light that saved us when all other lights had failed." The chamber erupted in applause that lasted several minutes. Ambassadors from species who had once looked down on humans now bowed their heads in respect. The galaxy had changed forever. Far from Prime, Admiral stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable. His ship had been towed to a repair station, too damaged to fly on its own. Scars covered her hull like wounds on a warrior's body, but she was still alive, still standing. Commander had survived her carrier's destruction. She had been rescued from an escape pod 3 hours after the battle ended. Now she stood beside, a bandage wrapped around her head, her arm in a sling. "The final count came in," she said quietly. 200,000 human lives lost, 1,200 ships destroyed. Closed his eyes. Each number was a name, a family, a story that would never be finished. The weight of it pressed on his heart like a stone. "And how many did we save?" he asked. Checked her, 47 billion across council space. Every species they would have harvested, every world they would have stripped, every civilization they would have erased. Opened his eyes and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, children were going to school instead of being taken as slaves. Families were eating dinner instead of dying in the cold of space. Civilizations were rebuilding instead of being forgotten. "Was it worth it?" asked. 200,000 lives. Thought for a long moment before answering. "Ask the people we saved," he said. "In 100 years, in 1,000, ask them if it was worth it." He turned away from the window. "I think they will say yes." On Earth, the monuments began to rise, but they were not the triumphant statues of conquering heroes that some expected. They were quiet gardens of remembrance, filled with flowers and trees and peaceful paths. Each garden held stones carved with names, thousands of names, hundreds of thousands. President walked through the first garden with Defense Minister Han at his side. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Birds sang in the trees. A gentle wind carried the smell of flowers. "The Council is calling us the galaxy's protectors now," said. "Other species are requesting permanent human garrisons to protect their borders. They want our ships, our soldiers, our protection." Knelt beside a memorial stone and placed a single white flower at its base. The stone bore the name of a young pilot who had died in the first hour of battle. She had been 20 years old. "We did not do this to become protectors," he said quietly. "We did not build those fleets for glory or power. We did it because people needed help, because it was the right thing to do." He stood and looked at the rows of stones stretching into the distance. These people did not die to make humanity great. They died because they believed in something bigger than themselves. We must never forget that. Nodded slowly, and if another threat comes, another darkness. Looked toward the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. "Then we will build 20 fleets, or 50, or 100, he smiled sadly. "We will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. That is who we are." Centuries passed. The story of the Black Dawn became legend. Every species in the galaxy knew the tale. Parents told it to their children. Teachers taught it in schools. Artists painted it. Poets wrote about it. It became one of the great stories of galactic history, remembered alongside the founding of the Council and the first contact between species. But the humans who told the story always added something the alien versions missed. They did not focus on the glory of victory or the power of their fleets. They spoke of and. They remembered the ordinary people who had done extraordinary things. They remembered not the winning but the choosing. For that was what made humanity different. Not their ships or their weapons or their technology, not their numbers or their strength or their courage. It was that they had made a choice. When the galaxy burned and every wise voice said to hide, humanity had chosen to stand. When the cost was measured in hundreds of thousands of lives, humanity had chosen to pay it. When the darkness seemed absolute and hope seemed dead, humanity had chosen to light a fire and keep it burning until dawn. And the galaxy knew, in its heart of hearts, that if darkness ever came again, humanity would make that same choice. Every single time. In a small garden on Earth, beneath a sky full of stars, a child asked her grandmother why humans had fought The old woman smiled and pointed up at the night sky. "Because someone had to," she said, "and we were there." The child thought about this for a moment. "Will we always be there?" she asked. Her grandmother held her close. "Always," she said. "That is who we are. That is who we will always be." Above them, the stars burned bright against the darkness. And somewhere out there, the galaxy slept peacefully, knowing that humanity was watching over them. Forever.